What's up, everybody? Cinephile Mike here. I have the privilege of talking with Marnie Blok, the director of Beyond Silence, which has recently been shortlisted for the Academy Awards this year in the live action short category. Marnie, how are you today?
I'm fine. I'm a bit jet lagged. We traveled around New York, LA, and London in 4 days, but to do screenings. But it was wonderful to do as well. So yeah, I'm great actually and excited.
So I'm going to dive right in. This film relies so heavily on what isn't said. How early in the process did you know that silence itself was going to be a storytelling tool rather than just an absence of dialogue?
What a good question. Well, I knew from the very beginning that I wanted to have a deaf actress as the main character. So I knew that silence would be a big thing because I thought it was a very strong metaphor, of course, for not being heard. Even all the people that are talking are not being heard. And I also knew that I was going to do this in one room, 70 minutes, real time, so the public would, the audience would follow her really in her struggle. So I also knew that the silence and also the sign language would give us a lot cinematographically and also sound-wise. So I did know it would be important, but along the way, certainly when we were doing sound, it was wonderful to find out how we could use it more and more. And also in the editing, yeah. So it's a bit of both. I knew what I wanted, but then when you go along, you can feel whatever you can do with it.
And when you think about that with the sound and the use and using the performers, how did you go about talk about directing these performances? Because like one of the goals with this, it's restraint. So how did you guide these actors to really, hold back without flattening the emotion to hit these talking points?
Well, choose very good actors, that's one. And of course, I knew Sigrid and Tamar, who Sigrid is playing the sister and Tamar is playing the older woman. I knew them already for a long time, and I also chose them because I know they are such good actresses. And Tamar did a lot of work that I had written, and she can really read between the lines of my text. So I was working on a series with her when I was starting to think about this, and I told her from the start, you have to be that character. And with Henrianne, it was a whole different journey because we don't have deaf actresses in Holland. So I knew I had to go and do auditions to find someone. But just before I started that up, my production designer introduced me to her. And I had a talk with her an hour and a half together with her interpreter. And biking back home, I thought, you know what, skip the auditions. I'm going to embark on this adventure with her because I had the feeling that sort of a gut feeling that she could relate to the subject. Not that she told me immediately she never lived through a rape, which was I was happy to hear, but she could relate to the subject in other ways. And I knew I was going to spend a lot of time with her because she never acted. And so, but I thought if I do that, if I spend a lot of time, I'll get there with her. And yes, I also really made sure that I stripped the script down severely again and again and again. So I worked on the script quite a long time to be sure, because I had to be very economic, because I had 70 minutes
Mhm.
to be sure that everything was in there. But this is exactly, you don't want to say too much. But that's fun. That's really fun to write that kind of dialogue. And I know the actors love it to play it because there's so much subtext. And for Sigrid, she has to voice her sister's voice, but hold the anger that is underneath. And yeah, she can play that in a fantastic way.
So it's interesting that you used that phrase, stripping down, the script, because that was actually one of my questions. Because this film, because it's in that, real time, and short films as a genre demand efficiency. So I was wondering if there was anything in particular that you had to strip down that you loved, but because it wasn't really helping you further the story, that I know it's like asking you
Yeah,
to pick a favorite child.
well, it's always a matter of killing your darlings, right? And I had a very good editor, and so she suggested something to take out. And I thought, no, how can you take that out? It's so important because then there's something said like, you know, and the older woman says a story always has two sides, and then the sister reacts very fiercely. No, there was only one side to this story, and it's hers. And but she said, you know, it's doubling because she would leave again. She would leave twice. She says, take it out. You can do without, and it's in you have as a writer, you have to. It's difficult to let go of things that you have written and you saw them in front of your eyes. But in the end, that worked out so much better. And you know, we had very little time to shoot. We had like 3 times 7 hours because
Oh
of
wow.
daylight in January and because of the budget. So and with a deaf girl on set and time to you need time for the interpretation. So I also didn't completely finish everything we wanted. So, you know, I also had to learn because this was my first time directing that in the edit, you have to do it with the material that is there, which was a very good lesson as well.
Nice.
So it wasn't even by choice that I had to skip things. It was I had to make bold choices because of time as well.
And speaking of those bold choices, visually, this film, in addition to very heady subject matter, it feels very intentional about space and proximity. And so, since you talked about only having, 7 hours a day for 3 days, can you talk a little bit about how you collaborated with your cinematographer to really block and frame this film to, hit these plot points?
Yeah, we talked a lot. Well, first of all, I had a wonderful cinematographer. If it wasn't for her, I think we wouldn't have had this film because she was pushing me, and she had a lot more experiences, of course, than I did on that matter. We talked a lot about the eye lines because we have three people, and Henrianne, the deaf girl, she's not. Also, I had to get used to that. That when you talk to her, she's not looking at you because she's looking at the interpreter, you know.
Mhm.
And so we had three lines of vision that we have to navigate, and that's something that I think Meerte Mosterman, the DOP, did so well because you never lose track. Because I didn't feel like doing a lot of establishing shots to show where we are and where everybody was sitting or standing or walking. So we stay very close to the characters, but she did a wonderful job there. We talked about it a lot, but then when you're on set, you have to do it at that moment. Also because I wanted to have freedom for the actors to put in what they wanted to put in as well.
And they all turn in such beautiful performances, just all of them so beautiful, I have to say. So,
Yeah.
congratulations. So, this is your first film. Congrats. And you were talking, your actors was their first time acting. So, not only are you tackling first time filmmaking, you're working with first time actors. You like to stack it on your plate. I appreciate that.
Well, I didn't have a choice, right? Because I wouldn't have made it. I told myself I will not make it without a deaf actress.
Right.
And I had to be honest, when I drove to set the very first morning with my DOP, I said, you know, I'm not really sure what I'm going to get from Henrianne because we did not rehearse the script. But I knew I had two brilliant actresses. And having been an actor myself, I know that acting has a lot to do with enabling someone else to act. So
Mhm.
I knew they would give her a lot. And also, I thought if she doesn't deliver, I'll sort of work it out in the edit. But all worries for nothing because she delivered big time.
Yeah. And now this is one of my favorite questions to ask directors. And now that you have, completed this project, especially as a first-time director, and you talked a little bit about the second part of this question already, so we're probably going to be spiraling back. But what would you say was the greatest lesson you learned and a best practice that you want to take from this experience into your next project? And what would you say was one of your greatest learning curves you'd like
Oh,
to avoid next time?
oh, avoid next time. Well, one of my the things that I learned very much is which I do want to take to the next project, which will hopefully be a feature of this, with Beyond Silence as maybe a first scene. But I would really like to explore much more the relationship between the two sisters,
Yeah.
and also. what happened to the woman, and I would, because it's really a two-generation story, and I would, and they're opposite of each other, and I really would like them to become allies in the end. What I would take from this process is trust your gut feeling,
Mhm.
which I really did a lot. Also, no, I decided that I really wanted to do that, and also I didn't have a lot of time to doubt. Surround yourself with really great people because filmmaking is the art of collaboration, and I had a wonderful crew. I mean, I couldn't have done it without them. And something I really learned is that by really making sure I had what I wanted to have in the script, that gave me the freedom on set for the actors and all others to put their thing on the table as well. Because for me, especially in this film, authenticity in the acting is really key. And I think by knowing what I wanted, I could also give the freedom to the actors to put in the scene what they needed to put in the scene. And that's then, then it starts to add up. So that's a big thing. The other one was the learning curve. Well, I learned from my editor very much. Let go of the script once you're
Yeah.
in the editing, because the material will tell you. And I said, no, but you know, I want the intention was this. And she said, yeah, well, I don't see it. So let's work with what we have. And then you'll get there anyway. But that was a very big lesson.
Nice. Well, should Beyond Silence go into feature mode, trust me when I say I will be one of the first ones online to buy a ticket.
No,
And
that's
the
cool.
last question, before we leave off, what are you hoping that audiences take away with them after the credits roll, watching Beyond Silence?
Well, for survivors, I would say, silence is may feel safe at first, but you are robbing yourself of something very fundamental, your voice, and with that, you're robbing yourself of a basic human right, which is to be heard and to participate. So I hope that survivors will find their people that they trust and start talking, and that they are able to put the shame and the guilt to where it belongs, which is with the perpetrator. That's one thing. And I hope that we all, as bystanders, that there is a really decisive role to be played as a bystander, which is not easy, I realize, because the perpetrator just asks you to shut up. A victim asks you to break a system open, and that's scary, but that's really, really what we need. And I hope to all men in the audience, I hope that they realize we need you as well. We can't do this without you. And I said the other day in London, I said there were so many men coming up to me saying, I'm on your side. I would never misuse my power, and I believe them, but it's not enough to be on our side. You need to get involved, and you need to hold other men accountable or other people accountable that are doing wrong things. So let's have this conversation because it's still out there, the problem, and already for such a long time.
And this film definitely gets that conversation going. Well, Marnie, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. Best of luck on the film's journey. It's an incredible film. For my followers, be on the lookout. This is a powerful film to take a look. Keep an eye out for Beyond Silence. Marnie, thank you again so much. It was a pleasure.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure, completely. Thanks.